She likes it.
Sweden would be the country that opened its doors when others were closing theirs, without demanding that newcomers adapt. And for decades, Sweden kept that promise with impressive consistency. In the 1970s and 1980s, Sweden received around 25,000 Latin Americans fleeing military dictatorships and around 30,000 Iranians after the Islamic Revolution. Thousands of refugees also arrived from long conflicts in Afghanistan, Eritrea, and Somalia. By the early 1990s, although the numbers were still moderate and only 2% of the population were immigrants, the change was starting to become visible. And the numbers kept rising in the years that followed. Sweden welcomed tens of thousands of refugees from the Balkan Wars, more than 80,000 people from Bosnia alone between 1992 and 1994. By the end of the century, over 1 million people living in Sweden had been born abroad, making up about 11% of the total population. In the 2000s, this trend continued. Year after year, Sweden kept receiving tens of thousands of immigrants and refugees from countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, and nations in the Horn of Africa. By 2010, the country had received almost 1.4 million immigrants, representing 14.3% of the Swedish population. In many urban neighborhoods, native Swedes were already a minority, and segregation, unemployment, and cultural differences were becoming more obvious. The breaking point came in 2015. That year, during the peak of the European migration crisis, Sweden, with just 10 million people, received 163,000 asylum applications in only 12 months, most of them from Syria. It was the highest per capita rate in the entire OECD. Asylum offices were overwhelmed. Local governments had to set up emergency shelters in gyms, hotels, and community centers, and the school and healthcare systems couldn't keep up. By 2024, 20% of the Swedish population were immigrants. This was a massive transformation of the country's demographics in just a few decades. But Sweden's immigration problem isn't just about numbers. It's that Sweden's welcome model is based on the idea that the government can manage integration from the top down, like just another administrative process. Migrants are sent to regions where they don't know anyone, where there are no jobs, and where even the locals don't know how to receive them. Unlike other European countries, Sweden gives citizenship without language tests, without needing a job, and without seriously checking criminal records. You only need to be physically present in the country for a certain amount of time. From day one, an immigrant has access to subsidized housing, free healthcare, education, unemployment benefits, and paid training courses. And slowly, those same systems that once helped Swedes ended up becoming an invisible trap for immigrants because they held them back. A clear example is the case of Iranian immigrants who came to Sweden during the 1980s and 1990s to escape the Islamic regime.
Your Honor, no more
Many
links.
of them were highly educated,
I love
middle
Briar
class,
feet.
and had professional
What the
experience.
fuck?
What the fuck?
But once in Sweden, only 18% managed to join the workforce, and on average, they earned 35% less than Swedes. In the United States, Iranian immigrants with similar backgrounds during the same period not only integrated, they earned on average 36% more than native-born Americans. The difference wasn't in the immigrant, it was in the system that receives them. In Sweden, more than 60% of jobs are found through informal contacts, friends, family, or former classmates. But new arrivals don't have those networks. And without the language, without references, and without social ties, the door to employment is shut. As a result, today, half of all non-Western immigrants in Sweden are unemployed. And among those who do have jobs, many work off and on with low pay and no real chance of moving up. On top of that, they receive up to 9 times more in government benefits than native Swedes. It's not because they don't want to work, it's because the system failed to demand what was needed for them to fully integrate. Instead of pushing people toward independence, the Swedish model kept them stuck, creating an environment where you didn't need to integrate to survive. Immigrants lost the motivation to learn the language, the urgency to find work, and even the need to understand the unspoken rules of society. What started as protection became exclusion, and the Swedish society split in two. There are entire neighborhoods where native Swedes are almost non-existent, where Swedish is no longer the main language, and where social norms are governed by their own separate codes. These are the so-called utsatta områden, or vulnerable areas. They include neighborhoods like Rinkeby in Stockholm, Rosengård in Malmö, or Angered in Gothenburg, where social exclusion, unemployment, and low education levels
Utsatta
the presence of
områden.
organized crime and rejection of authority. At the beginning of the 2010s, there were just over a dozen such areas. But year after year, the list grew. By 2015, there were 55. And in the official 2023 report, the number reached 59, with 17 of them classified as especially vulnerable. That year, around 550,000 people, about 5% of the population,
Still safer than NA. I don't know about that.
Public services work only part of the time, where police face serious challenges to operate, and where the law is replaced by intimidation and the informal power of criminal gangs. The most worrying part isn't just that these areas exist, it's that they persist. In many cases, these are the same neighborhoods listed in the first reports over a decade ago. They haven't disappeared. On the contrary, they've become entrenched as parallel enclaves
Give them
within the Swedish
guns,
state.
and they will be NA.
This was a direct result of a model
They have guns.
to integrate
They also have grenades.
A clear example is the school system.
And it's not just utsatta områden, as he puts it.
Stopped working when students
There were shootings in central Stockholm, grenades in central Stockholm.
The official solution was to keep them together, hoping
like the nicest areas you can possibly go to.
But in practice, that mix didn't raise standards, it lowered them.
There was a shooting in the area that I live in. 2 streets behind me. Someone got shot, murdered.
In the 2022 PISA reports, 25% of 15-year-old students in Sweden failed to reach the basic level of math skills, and around 24% didn't reach that level in reading comprehension either. Public schools in vulnerable areas are not only failing to integrate, they're failing to teach. And that has long-term consequences. Because if the first generation of immigrants